Welcome back. This is BL Stories for You. I'm an indie author dedicated to original BL storytelling. From high school drama to fantasy worlds, everything you hear is written by me. I'm so glad you're here for this journey. Let's begin.
After the tense confrontation, Aarhiya quietly excused himself and left the room, the echoes of laughter and music fading behind him. The mood he had created didn't last long. The moment he disappeared from sight, Lenreya's smile vanished. Her eyes hardened as she turned to the concubines, who were still holding their cups, their earlier joy now replaced with unease. "So," she said coldly, her voice slicing through the lingering music, "you all had fun." No one answered. "You were supposed to make her miserable," Lenrea continued, pacing slowly in front of them like a judge in a courtroom. "You were supposed to remind her of her place. And instead, you let her play you like children." The women lowered their heads. She stopped in front of them, gaze sharp. "Tell me, would you be happy if a nobody like her became empress?" Some of them shifted awkwardly. Others looked conflicted. One woman bit her lip. At least today was nice." Another whispered, "We haven't laughed like that in a long time." Lenreya's eyes flashed. "Pick a side," she snapped. "Or you will suffer in my hands. I assure you." The threat was clear. The air grew heavy. She turned on her heels and stormed out, silk sleeves swishing violently behind her. The moment she left, the room exhaled. Several concubines immediately gathered around Mina, their faces pale. "She's getting worse," one whispered. "Every day, she gets worse." "We only agree with her because we're scared," another admitted, voice trembling. "You've seen what her curses can do. No one wants to be her enemy." A third woman clasped her hands nervously. "If she becomes empress, not just the palace, she'll control the entire kingdom. I don't think I could live like that." There was a moment of silence before someone else spoke, quietly but firmly. "I'd rather the emperor choose Srehea." The others looked at her, surprised. At least Srehea feels human. "If the rumors about the emperor being in love with her is true, then our lives here would become easier," she continued. Another nodded. "If she becomes empress, at least someone kind would have power over Lenreya." Mina's expression tightened. She looked around carefully before lowering her voice. "Stop talking," she warned softly. "The palace has ears. Walls have ears. Servants have ears. If anyone hears this, we're all finished." The women stiffened. Mina sighed. "We can't choose sides. Not yet. All we can do is wait, and watch." Aarhiya walked back to his room with unsteady steps, the soft glow of lanterns blurring at the edges of his vision. The laughter from the harem still echoed faintly in his ears, but it felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. He had acted so boldly earlier. So confidently. But the moment Lenreya had challenged him, he'd seen the shock on everyone's faces. The fear. The whispers. Only now did it truly sink in, he might have made a huge mistake. The moon festival, what even is it, he wondered, pressing a hand to his temple. What did I just agree to? Then his body tensed. A familiar, unwanted heat crept through his veins. His breath hitched. His fingers curled into his sleeves. No, not again. The pill. The effect had worn off. He needed another one, now. He quickened his pace, almost jogging through the corridors. He didn't notice the footsteps behind him. Kenar had been watching him from the moment he left the harem. He had intended to stop him, to talk some sense into him. Taking charge of the moon festival was not a game. It was politics, tradition, power, and danger wrapped into one night. But then he noticed something was wrong. Aarhiya's steps were hurried. Uneven. He looked, distressed. So Kenar followed him. Aarhiya reached his door and slipped inside, shutting it quickly. But before he could even summon the pill, the door opened again. Kenar stepped in. Aarhiya froze. His heart slammed into his chest. "Your Majesty, what are you doing here?" he asked, voice strained. Kenar closed the door behind him and stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly. "About the festival. Do you even know what you agreed to?" Aarhiya swallowed, backing away. "How did you even know?" "I know everything that happens in my palace." Aarhiya sighed. I can handle it." Kenar frowned. "You don't look like you can handle anything right now." He took a step closer. Aarhiya's pulse spiked. "Are you sick?" Kenar asked, his voice softer now. Aarhiya shook his head, turning away, gripping the edge of the table for support. "I'm fine. Please leave." But his legs betrayed him. The room tilted. His strength drained in an instant. He collapsed. Kenar reacted immediately, catching him before he hit the floor. "Aarhiya," he called, holding him upright. For a moment, Aarhiya's breathing was shallow and uneven. His hands trembled against Kenar's chest, fingers clutching at fabric as though it were the only thing keeping him grounded. Then his expression changed. The panic softened into something warmer. Too warm. He lifted his head slowly and looked at Kenar with half-lidded eyes, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You're really handsome," he murmured. Kenar stiffened. "What?" Aarhiya reached up, brushing his fingers against Kenar's cheek as if testing something unreal. "I've been thinking about it for a while. I want to be bonded to you." Kenar's breath caught. This wasn't like him. "Aarhiya, what are you saying?" he asked quietly, but his grip didn't loosen. Aarhiya leaned closer, his voice low and unguarded. "You're strong. When you're near, everything feels calmer. I want you." Kenar's heart raced. He could feel the warmth of Aarhiya's skin through his clothes, the softness of his breath against his neck. He felt everything at once, weakness, desire, danger. But he didn't pull away. They stared at each other, their faces only inches apart, as if the invisible walls they had built around themselves had finally cracked and crumbled. Kenar held Aarhiya steady, his expression torn between frustration and something far more dangerous. "You're doing something reckless," he said quietly, his voice low but strained. "I've spent years making sure I never feel this way about anyone. And yet, here you are, breaking my barriers." Aarhiya blinked up at him, eyes unfocused but sincere. "Why does it matter?" Kenar's jaw tightened. "Because I refuse to lose control." He looked away for a moment, as if trying to gather himself. "I don't want to treat you like an impulse. I don't want to behave like some creature driven only by instinct. You have no idea how much strength it's taking me to stop myself right now." Aarhiya didn't seem to care. He continued tracing his fingers down his cheek with a softness that made Kenar's breath hitch. "I don't mind," he whispered. "I like being close to you." For a heartbeat, Kenar almost gave in. But he pulled away. He straightened, exhaled slowly, and then carefully lifted Aarhiya into his arms. Aarhiya was light, warm, and far too vulnerable in his hold. Kenar carried him to the bed and laid him down gently, tucking the blankets around him as if he were made of glass. "I should go," Kenar muttered, more to himself than to Aarhiya. But Aarhiya's hand shot out, catching his sleeve. "Don't," he murmured. "Please, don't leave. It's cold." Kenar hesitated. Then, with a quiet sigh, he sat beside him and lay down, pulling Aarhiya closer and wrapping an arm around him. Aarhiya instinctively curled toward him, his breathing slowly evening out as sleep claimed him. Kenar stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the steady rhythm of Aarhiya's breath. "I'm not an animal," he whispered softly, so quietly that only the night could hear him. "When I choose you, I'll do it the right way." Aarhiya didn't hear him. He was already asleep, resting peacefully in the Emperor's arms. Meanwhile, Todi and the other palace staff were in a mild panic. The Emperor hadn't returned to his chambers to sleep, and no one had seen him all night. They searched the corridors, the gardens, even the training valley, completely unaware that Kenar was currently fast asleep in someone else's room. Curled around Aarhiya. Aarhiya was the first to wake up. He felt warm. Too warm. Then he realized why. Kenar's arm was wrapped around him, their bodies far too close for comfort. Aarhiya froze, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might wake the entire palace. Memories of the previous night flooded his mind, how bold he had been, how shameless he had acted. He wanted to disappear. Carefully, he tried to slip out of Kenar's hold. But before he could move an inch, Kenar tightened his grip and pulled him back, holding his waist and looking deep into his eyes. "Leaving already?" Kenar murmured, his voice still heavy with sleep. "Last night, you were far more determined." Aarhiya's face burned. I'm sorry," he blurted out, sitting up so fast he almost fell off the bed. "I wasn't myself. I swear, I didn't mean." Kenar sat up too, watching him with an unreadable expression. "You're lucky I'm a gentleman," he said bluntly. "Otherwise, yesterday would have ended very differently." Aarhiya wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He tried to stand, but Kenar caught his arm, stopping him. "Sit," Kenar said. "We need to talk." Aarhiya hesitated but obeyed. "So," Kenar continued, crossing his arms, "how exactly do you plan to handle the moon festival?" Aarhiya blinked. "I'll handle it." Kenar let out a short breath. "No, you can't." He shook his head, clearly irritated. "You let her provoke you. You have no idea what you just agreed to." Aarhiya swallowed. "The moon festival," Kenar explained, "is the most important event in Umbraeth. The nobles, the villagers, everyone gathers to honor the moon, the source of our magic. They pray for the heavens to remember us. To bring back the sun." His tone darkened. "It's usually handled by Lenreya because it's dangerous. If anything goes wrong, an accident, a fire, a death, you will be held responsible. And in this kingdom, responsibility can mean execution." Aarhiya's eyes widened in horror. "Execution?" Kenar nodded. "Yes." For a moment, Aarhiya's bravado crumbled. Then Kenar added, "I can put a stop to this. I'll tell them to revoke it. You don't have to do this." Aarhiya stared at him, surprised by the concern in his voice. But then he shook his head. "No." Kenar frowned. "Don't be stubborn." "I'm not," Aarhiya insisted, his voice steadier than he felt. "If I back out now, Lenreya wins. And I refuse to give her that satisfaction." He clenched his fists. "I made the decision. I'll take responsibility. I'll make the moon festival amazing. You'll see." Kenar studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, just a little. "You're reckless," he said. "But persistent." He sighed. "Fine. If you need help, ask me. I won't let you face this alone." Aarhiya's heart skipped a beat. They were still sitting far too close. He cleared his throat. Your Majesty. We're very close." Kenar immediately stiffened, realized their proximity, and moved back as if burned. "Training starts in an hour," he said quickly, "don't be late." And with that, he left the room, leaving Aarhiya sitting on the bed, heart racing and mind spinning. Meanwhile, Todi and the rest of the palace staff were still in full-blown panic. They still hadn't found the Emperor and rumors were already began to swirl. Todi, looking exhausted, decided the best place to start was with Srehea. She was the Emperor's personal maid now. If anyone had seen him, it would be her. She walked briskly towards Lenreya's room, already preparing to scold her for not reporting anything unusual. But just as she reached the door, it opened. And Kenar stepped out. For a split second, the entire hallway went silent. Servants froze. Guards stiffened. The Emperor had just walked out of Lenreya's room. Kenar, however, looked completely unfazed. He adjusted his sleeves calmly and addressed them like nothing strange had happened. "Prepare my bath," he ordered. "And do not disturb Lenreya. She had a long night." That was all he said. But to everyone present, that was more than enough. Immediately, imaginations ran wild. Whispered gasps spread through the hallway, and scandalous theories formed in their minds. But no one dared to say a word. They bowed and followed Kenar back to his chambers, pretending they hadn't seen anything. Later that day, Toda finally caught Aarhiya alone as he was on his way to attend to the Emperor. She blocked his path, her expression unusually serious. "Lenreya," she said quietly. "Be honest with me." He blinked. "About what?" She folded her arms. "Is there something going on between you and His Majesty?" Aarhiya nearly tripped over his own feet. "And no. Of course not," he said too quickly. Toda raised an eyebrow. "You and the Emperor have been acting strange. And this morning, he was caught walking out of your room." Aarhiya's ears burned. "That was nothing. We were just talking about the moon festival. That's all." She didn't look convinced. "Kenar isn't behaving like himself," she muttered. "And I've served him long enough to know when something has changed." Then her expression softened, replaced by concern. "And about the moon festival, you really did something rash," she added. "Lenreya will not let this slide. She will find a way to sabotage you. That woman doesn't lose gracefully." Aarhiya nodded, his face serious now. "I'll be careful," he promised. But before Toda could lecture him further, he bowed slightly and hurried past her. "I have to attend to His Majesty," he said, quickly disappearing into Kenar's chambers. Toda watched him go, her worry deepening. Whatever was happening between them. She had a feeling it was going to shake not just the entire palace but the entire kingdom. In Kenar's chamber, Aarhiya found him already fully dressed. No half-buttoned robes. No loose hair. No excuse for Aarhiya to step closer than necessary. It was intentional, and they both knew it. Keeping their distance was safer, for their hearts, for their sanity, for everything that could go terribly wrong if either of them lost control. Aarhiya bowed, keeping his gaze steady, and Kenar gave a brief nod. No teasing, no lingering glances. Just two people pretending they weren't constantly aware of each other. From that day onward, training became routine. Aarhiya still couldn't fly, no matter how much he pushed himself. His body ached, his muscles burned, but there was small progress, tiny, frustrating progress. He could run faster without breaking a sweat while carrying huge rocks. He could even sword fight with Kenar without collapsing. Kenar didn't mock him. He corrected him calmly, sometimes firmly, sometimes with quiet encouragement that made Aarhiya want to try harder than anything else in his life. At the same time, Aarhiya had been buried in moon festival preparations. Yami handed him Lenreya's old lists. They were precise, orderly and painfully dull. Aarhiya stared at them and groaned. "This is so boring." Everything was predictable. Dark banners, muted lanterns, formal performances. The people would attend because they had to, not because they were looking forward to the event. So Aarhiya rewrote everything. He drafted his own lists, bright lantern colors, street performances, food stalls, music, things that would make people laugh, gather, and forget their worries for a night. He brought the lists to Kenar, nervous but determined. Kenar read through them carefully, his expression unreadable at first. Then his lips curved slightly, and Aarhiya's heart skipped. "This is lively," Kenar said. He approved the budget without hesitation, signing off on nearly everything Aarhiya suggested. Aarhiya couldn't believe it. He had expected pushback. Instead, Kenar seemed genuinely amused, and oddly pleased. Their quiet moments reviewing plans became something Aarhiya secretly looked forward to. One evening, Kenar surprised him. "You should see the night market yourself," he had said. "Some items are better chosen in person." Aarhiya blinked. "You mean, me?" "I mean," Kenar corrected, "us." Kenar dressed as ordinarily as possible, simple robes, no crown, no royal insignia. Still, he looked like someone people instinctively stepped aside for. Aarhiya couldn't help but be impressed by how handsome he looked despite being dressed so ordinarily. In the market, Kenar became different. He leaned closer to Aarhiya, commented on things he thought Aarhiya would like, and casually bought anything that caught Aarhiya's attention. He even teased him about his indecision, his eyes warm and playful. The servants trailing them from a discreet distance looked like they wanted the ground to swallow them whole. The emperor was flirting, one of them thought, horrified. In public. Aarhiya and Kenar were still walking together when they saw her. A woman in a small shop, weaving cloth on a glowing loom. The fabric shimmered, bright, radiant colors that seemed to capture light itself. Reds, golds, blues that reminded Aarhiya painfully of Luminar. Of home. Of the clothes he used to wear before Umbraeth swallowed him in shadows. He stood there, mesmerized. Kenar noticed immediately. "You like it?" he asked softly. Aarhiya startled, then shook his head too quickly. "No. It's nothing. Just, different." He walked away before Kenar could say anything else. But Kenar lingered for a moment, glancing back at the weaver, at the bright cloth, remembering the way Aarhiya's eyes had lit up. He didn't say anything. The night market eventually faded into softer lights and quieter sounds as Kenar guided Aarhiya away from the crowded streets. The path led them toward a wide, tranquil lake, its surface glowing under floating lanterns and moonlight. Elegant boats drifted lazily across the water, each carrying quiet laughter and hushed whispers. Kenar stopped at the dock and turned to Aarhiya. "Do you want to go on a boat?" Aarhiya's eyes lit up at first. "Really? I've never." He paused when he noticed the other boats more closely. Most of them carried couples sitting close, sharing soft conversations, some even holding hands. His excitement instantly turned into awkwardness. I mean, it's fine," he muttered, suddenly avoiding Kenar's gaze. Kenar followed his line of sight and seemed to understand. A faint smile touched his lips. "This place is called Lover's Creek," he said casually. "It's one of the few dating spots in Umbraeth." Aarhiya froze. "Dating spot? Then people will misunderstand. They'll think, we." Kenar looked genuinely puzzled by the panic in Aarhiya's voice. "Why does that matter so much?" he asked calmly. "We're just two people taking a boat ride." Aarhiya opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have a good answer. With a hesitant nod, Aarhiya stepped into the boat, and Kenar followed, taking a seat across from him. The water rocked gently beneath them, carrying them away from the shore. Kenar kept looking at him. Not briefly. Not casually. He just kept looking. Aarhiya shifted in his seat, his ears burning. "Is there something on my face?" Instead of answering, Kenar reached into the side of the boat. "Play the flute," he said. "For me." Aarhiya blinked, surprised, but he took the flute from his sleeve and lifted it to his lips. The soft melody floated across the lake, gentle and melancholic, weaving through the lantern-lit air. As the notes spread, tiny glowing fireflies emerged from the reeds and trees, gathering around the boat as if drawn by the sound. They shimmered like tiny stars, surrounding them in a soft, golden haze. Aarhiya noticed the fireflies and smiled, enchanted. But Kenar wasn't watching them. He was watching Aarhiya. The glow reflected in Aarhiya's eyes, his hair fluttering slightly in the night breeze, his expression peaceful and unguarded. For Kenar, everything else faded into the background. Meanwhile, far from the lake's quiet serenity, Advisor Durian stood in Lenreya's private chamber, his expression dark and displeased. "I hope you have something truly serious planned," he said coldly. "You allowed that maid to take charge of the moon festival. If she succeeds, her influence will grow." Lenreya smiled, swirling the wine in her cup as if none of it concerned her. "Don't worry, uncle," she replied confidently. "With what I'm planning, days in this palace are numbered." Her eyes gleamed with something dangerous. Nell sat on a tall stool in Polar's workshop, his chin resting on his palm as he watched the older boy move around the cluttered room. Bottles bubbled on open flames, powders shimmered in glass jars. Polar looked completely lost in his world. He didn't notice Nell staring. Didn't notice the dripping potion beside him. Didn't even notice when one of his test tubes started smoking dangerously. Nell sighed. "So, what exactly are you doing?" Polar didn't look up. "Trying to make history." "That doesn't answer my question." Finally, Polar turned, his eyes bright with excitement. "I'm working on an invention. A potion, a device, something that can allow someone from Umbraeth to leave the barrier. Even if it's just for a while. To feel the sun again." Nell blinked. That sounded impossible. "But something is missing," Polar continued, frowning at his notes. "I can't figure out what it is. Every formula collapses. Every spell fails." Nell shrugged, unimpressed. "That's cool and all, but I just want to see Aarhiya, I mean Srehea." Polar rolled his eyes. "Of course you do." He walked over and shoved a tray of crushed crystals into Nell's hands. "You can forget about seeing Aarhiya until he's able to pass Kenar's test." Those were his words, not mine. "And since I'm letting you stay here, the least you can do is help me." Nell groaned. "You're using me as free labor." "Yes," Polar replied cheerfully. Reluctantly, Nell started grinding the crystals, occasionally complaining, occasionally asking questions, but mostly zoning out. Hours passed. Polar finally stretched and declared himself satisfied. "Fine," Polar said, wiping his hands. "You've earned a break. I'll take you out." "Out where?" Nell asked. Polar hesitated. "There's not much to see here. Unless you like bars and prostitute houses. Those are basically the only places people go for happiness." "That's depressing." "I warned you." Still, they both left together. Umbraeth's streets were exactly as Polar had described, dim, gray, and lifeless. People moved like shadows, shops were dull, and laughter was rare. "This place feels dead," Nell muttered. Polar stopped in the middle of a barren square and pulled out a small pouch. He sprinkled a shimmering powder onto the cracked ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, green. Tiny shoots pushed through the stone, growing rapidly into bright flowers, glowing vines, and delicate blossoms that shimmered like moonlight. The air suddenly felt lighter, warmer, alive. Nell's breath caught. Whoa! The sight was breathtaking. But just as quickly as they appeared, the flowers faded, turning to dust and disappearing back into the lifeless ground. Polar stared at the empty space, his expression both proud and frustrated. "Short-lived," he muttered. "Everything I make is short-lived. I'm still missing something." Nell looked at him with genuine awe. "Still, that was amazing." Polar blinked, surprised by the sincerity. Then he smiled, a little shyly. "Thanks." Nell smiled. "I know we haven't known each other for that long, but watching you this whole time, I think you'll do something groundbreaking one day. I just know it." For a brief moment, they just stood there, looking at each other, the empty square suddenly feeling less empty. Then, "Hey! You too!" Rough voices broke the silence. A group of men staggered out of a dark alley. Their clothes were torn, their faces dirty, eyes sharp with hunger and resentment. "You don't look like you belong here," one of them sneered, stepping toward Nello. "You look fresh. Rich. Soft." Nello stiffened. The man reached out, grabbing his arms. "Give us what you've got. Money, jewels, anything." Before Nello could react, Polar stepped forward. "Back off," he said firmly, his usual playful tone gone. The men laughed. "And what are you going to?" Polar tossed a handful of glowing dust into the air. The powder exploded into bright flashes and illusions, phantom beasts, blinding lights, loud sounds. The men stumbled back, swearing and shielding their eyes. Polar grabbed Nello's hand and pulled him away. They sprinted through the narrow streets, laughing breathlessly once they were far enough. Nello stared at Polar, his heart still racing. All his life, he had been the one protecting others, especially Aarhiya. No one had ever stood in front of him like that. Seeing Polar laugh, carefree and fearless, made something warm twist in his chest. They kept running, their laughter echoing through the empty streets of Umbraeth, two bright sparks in a dark, quiet world. The day of the moon festival finally arrived. Servants ran across courtyards carrying lanterns shaped like crescent moons. The gardens, once dim and quiet, were filled with glowing flowers, floating lights, and shimmering ribbons that reflected the pale moonlight. The streets outside the palace walls were lined with luminous banners and soft music echoed from every direction. For the first time in years, Umbraeth looked alive. People whispered as they walked through the festival grounds, their eyes wide, their voices hushed in awe. "It's like the sun is here. I've never seen the palace this bright." Some even reached out, half expecting the light to burn their hands. Lenreya stood near the main pavilion, her nails digging into her palms. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp, burning with jealousy she could barely mask. This was supposed to be her stage. Mina and the other concubines stood a distance away, looking surprised because none of them had expected this. "It's incredible," one of them whispered. Mina nodded, her gaze drifting toward the glowing lake where floating lanterns danced on the water. She really did it. But none of them dared to sound too impressed. Lenreya's presence alone was enough to keep their excitement restrained. The elders arrived soon after, their robes heavy with status and judgment. They walked through the festival grounds, murmuring among themselves, inspecting every detail. One of them chuckled, casting a sideways glance at advisor Durian. "It seems your niece has competition." Another added with mock innocence, "Who would have thought a mere maid could create something so breathtaking?" Durian's jaw tightened, but he forced a thin smile. "My niece has her own strengths." "Clearly," the elder replied dryly. Meanwhile, Aarhiya stood alone in his room, finally able to breathe. He was exhausted. His hands ached, his head throbbed, and he felt like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. But as he looked out the window and saw the glowing festival grounds, a soft smile curved on his lips. "I actually did it." He turned toward his bed, and froze. Resting neatly on the silk covers was a hanfu. Blue and silver. The fabric shimmered like moonlight on water, embroidered with delicate cloud patterns and tiny silver threads that caught the light. It was elegant, soft, and painfully familiar. It looked like something from Luminar. Aarhiya's chest tightened. He picked up the small folded note placed beside it. "Aarhiya, I noticed you were staring at the weaver's shop that day. I figured you missed the colors of your home. Consider this a gift, and my gratitude. You did well. Kenar." For a long moment, Aarhiya just stared at the note. Then he laughed softly, his eyes stinging. "That man," he muttered, pressing the fabric to his chest. He noticed. He hadn't even realized how much he missed Luminar until that moment. The brightness, the colors, the sunlight. This Hanfu felt like a piece of home wrapped in silk. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty room. Polar adjusted his fur coat as he watched the lanterns rising into the sky from inside his hut. "The moon festival is tonight," he said casually, glancing at Nello. "I'll take you there," Polar said, pretending not to notice how excited the boy suddenly looked. "This is your chance." Nello froze, then tried, and failed, to hide his smile. "Oh really? You're serious?" "Yes, let's go." Polar sighed, already walking toward the door. At the same time, far from the palace walls, a poor widow held her little son's hand as they walked toward the glowing lights in the distance. "Mother," the boy muttered, looking up. "Last year was boring. Just old men talking and boring prayers. Why are we even going again?" His mother chuckled softly. "Because festivals are blessings. And because food will be served." But when they finally reached the festival grounds, the boy stopped in his tracks. His jaw dropped. Lights floated in the air like tiny stars. Lanterns shaped like moons hovered above the lake, glowing softly. Flowers shimmered with silver petals, and the palace itself looked like it had been dipped in sunlight. "Mother," he whispered. "Is this really Umbraeth?" She stared in silence, tears forming in her eyes. "It's beautiful." As night fully settled, drums rolled across the grounds, deep and powerful, echoing through the city. Flutes joined in, followed by soft chimes and rhythmic clapping. People gathered in the main square, their faces glowing with anticipation. Then the emperor arrived. Kenar walked into the plaza dressed in ceremonial robes, layers of dark fabric embroidered with silver runes. His crown partially covered his face, glowing faintly with magic. The crowd immediately dropped to their knees. "Long live the emperor!" He raised his hand slightly, and the music softened. Whitey stepped forward, followed by a group of magic servants dressed in ceremonial robes. They formed a circle around the central altar, raising their staffs as glowing symbols appeared in the air. Their voices rose in unison. "Great heavenlies, watchers of the skies, remember Umbraeth." Light burst upward, forming a beam that pierced the dark clouds. People clasped their hands together, whispering prayers, some hopeful, some desperate. When the prayers ended, the tension lifted like a sigh across the crowd. And then, food. Trays of steaming dishes were brought out, sweets, fruits, glowing drinks, and rare treats many villagers hadn't tasted in years. Laughter spread, children ran around with lanterns, couples danced, and elders smiled. It was the best festival they had ever had in years. Kenar barely heard any of it. His gaze was fixed on one person. Aarhiya walked, dressed in that hanfu that shimmered like moonlight. While everyone else wore dark shades of Umbraeth's traditional colors, he looked like a living star. He was smiling. Watching the people laugh. Watching children dance. Watching the lanterns float. He looked satisfied. Aarhiya noticed him staring and lifted his hand slightly, pressing his palm to his chest in a small bow. A silent thank you. Kenar's lips curved upward beneath the veil. Then a strange, impulsive idea struck him. Before he could overthink it, he stepped forward and raised his hand. "My people," Kenar's voice echoed across the plaza, magically amplified. The music slowly faded, and the crowd turned to him. "There is someone I wish you to meet." Whispers spread. Kenar's gaze moved to Aarhiya. "This person is responsible for the radiance you see tonight. And she is also someone who can play the flute better than anyone I know." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aarhiya froze. Kenar continued calmly, "Lenrea. Come forward." Aarhiya's heart nearly stopped. He did not just. The concubines stared. The elders whispered. The villagers looked around curiously. Left with no choice, Aarhiya slowly walked to the platform. Every step felt unreal, like walking through a dream. Finally at the top, he summoned his flute, his hands trembling slightly. The crowd fell silent. Then he lifted the flute to his lips. The first note flowed out, soft, clear, and impossibly beautiful. It echoed across the lake, rising into the night sky like a prayer made of sound. Everyone listened. And Kenar watched. Polar leaned against one of the pillars near the edge of the plaza, arms folded as he watched the festival unfold. His eyes, however, were not on the lanterns, the dancers, or the emperor. They were on Nello. Nello stood a few steps away, completely still, his gaze locked onto the platform where Aarhiya played the flute. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't blinking. He looked like someone who had forgotten the world existed. Polar sighed quietly. So, he muttered to himself, it's that kind of feeling. It was obvious. Nello wasn't just grateful to Aarhiya. This wasn't admiration. This wasn't friendship. It was one-sided love. Polar clicked his tongue and looked away, pretending not to notice how Nello's hands trembled slightly every time Aarhiya's music shifted. It wasn't his business anyway, yet why was he somehow annoyed? Meanwhile, Lenreya sat with the other concubines looking normal, but no one could see what she was actually doing in the shadows. Her lips moved silently, fingers tracing dark symbols in the air. Black mist curled around her lips like a living thing. Go, she whispered. The curse slithered through the crowd like an invisible serpent, searching, then latching onto a small, fragile soul. The widow's son. The boy blinked, his expression suddenly going blank. Slowly, he released his mother's hand and began walking away. She didn't notice, she was too caught up in the music, too mesmerized by the lights and beauty around her. Soon, the boy stood on a high ledge, his small body swaying unnaturally, eyes dark and empty. Someone screamed. The widow turned, and her heart stopped. My son. The boy jumped. A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. And before anyone could think, before Kenar could even stand, Aarhiya dropped the flute. And jumped after him. The world went silent. People froze. They're both dead. The widow collapsed to her knees. Kenar's heart stopped. Then, a streak of white shot upward from below. A figure rose from the darkness. Aarhiya. He was holding the boy tightly in his arms. And he was flying. The crowd stared. Kenar stared. Aarhiya hovered in the air, his long robes fluttering, his hair glowing like the sun. The boy clung to him, crying, the curse dissolving into smoke. Aarhiya was glowing. Not metaphorically. He was literally glowing. Light poured from his skin, soft but powerful, like a rising sun. The dark clouds above Umbraeth trembled, parting just a little. People shielded their eyes. Is that sunlight? Is he a heaven touched? He's shining, like the sun. Kenar removed his crown and stood frozen. It was true. The realization hit him like thunder. She is the one. The one Whitey had spoken of. The one the kingdom had waited for. The one who could awaken the sun again. Lenreya's nails dug into her palms as she stared in shock. Advisor Durian's expression darkened, his mind racing. Mina and the concubines watched in stunned silence. Polar stared, wide-eyed. Nello felt his breath leave his lungs. Far away, on a distant hill, a cloaked figure watched the glowing boy. Sakador smiled under the hood of his cloak. So, it's you, he whispered. His eyes gleamed. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.